What if I told you that the single greatest year in cinema history wasn't 1994 or 2001, but 1967? A year when directors completely lost their minds, threw away the rulebook, and made films that still confuse and hypnotize audiences today. We are talking about a Japanese hitman who smells rice, a Czechoslovakian medieval epic shot like a brutalist painting, a French comedy with no plot but a million gags, a psychedelic folk horror from the hippie underground, and Frank Sinatra playing a washed-up detective. These aren't just movies, they are psychological endurance tests. Here are 5 movies from 1967 that will break your brain. Imagine The Revenant mixed with medieval church frescoes, shot entirely in black and white, with no musical score for the first hour. Directed by František Vlasel, this Czechoslovakian epic is widely considered one of the greatest films ever made, yet most people have never heard of it. This is a brutal, visceral story of 2 warring feudal clans in the 13th century. Markéta is a young woman forced into a convent who gets kidnapped by a ruthless knight, Mikolas. But do not expect romance. The conflict is survival against the harsh, unforgiving winter, starvation, and the madness of religious fervor. The film refuses to hold your hand, characters speak in archaic dialects, and the narrative jumps through time like shattered glass. You, the viewer, are dropped into this muddy, bloody world without context, just as the characters are dropped into their violent fate. The climax is a hallucinatory massacre where the lines between reality, legend, and delirium blur completely. Vlasel uses rapid montage, flashing images of wolves, burning forests, and religious icons, to simulate a fever dream. The payoff is tragic and bleak. Markéta loses her innocence not through romance, but through sheer brutality. This film rewards the patient viewer. The lack of traditional plot forces you to absorb the atmosphere, the sound of wind, and the texture of mud. It is cinema as a sensory overload, not a story. Jacques Tati built an entire futuristic city on a soundstage just to destroy it for comedy. Costing a fortune and bankrupting him, Playtime is a 70mm widescreen masterpiece where the real star is not the actor, but the architecture itself. There is no traditional conflict. Monsieur Hewlett, Tati's iconic bumbling character, wanders through a hypermodern, glass and steel Paris where everything is sterile, cold, and confusingly identical. The joke is that the humans have become robots in their own environment. Doors don't open correctly, restaurant chairs squeak endlessly, and office workers get trapped in glass cubicles. The conflict is man versus modernity. Tati forces you to scan the massive frame, catching visual gags happening in the background, foreground, and periphery simultaneously. The final act takes place in a chaotic, falling-apart restaurant where the ceiling collapses, the floor breaks, and the patrons finally start having fun. The rigid, mechanical world disintegrates into human chaos. The payoff is philosophical. Perfection is boring, and imperfection is where life lives. Tati refuses to give you close-ups or a main character to follow. He demands you watch the entire picture. This active viewing style keeps your brain working at 100%. You are not watching a movie, you are a detective solving a visual puzzle. No, not the Night Shyamalan trees. This is the counterculture, hippie exploitation thriller directed by Elliot Silverstein. It features a gang of aimless flower children who kidnap a wealthy businessman, and it goes absolutely nowhere, on purpose. A group of bored, nihilistic youths, led by a terrifyingly calm Anthony Quinn, wait, no, it's actually George Maharis and a young Robert Walker Jr., decide to kidnap a wealthy executive for fun. They drag him to a desert island. But here is the twist, the executive starts to like it. He becomes their captive, not by force, but by psychological submission. The conflict is generational, the establishment versus the dropouts. But the film plays it like a bizarre comedy of manners, where no one knows what they actually want. The ending is infamous. The businessman willingly stays with his captors, abandoning his wife and fortune. But because he finds their emptiness more liberating than his structured life. The payoff is deeply unsettling because the film offers no moral lesson. The hippies are not heroes, they are just lost children. The businessman is not a victim, he is a coward. This film tanks so hard because it refuses to pick a side. But that ambiguity is exactly why it is a masterpiece of 1967. It captures the confusion of an era better than any propaganda film could. Frank Sinatra plays a hard-boiled, wisecracking Miami private eye in this neon-noir thriller. Directed by Gordon Douglas, this film is pure, unadulterated 60s swagger. It is the antithesis of the artsy films we just discussed, and that is exactly why it makes the list. Tony Rome is a cynical, alcoholic ex-cop who takes a job hunting down a missing woman for a wealthy tycoon. The case spirals into a web of murder, adultery, and stolen jewels. Sinatra delivers every line with a martini dry wit that makes you feel cool just by watching him. The conflict is classic noir. The deeper he digs, the dirtier the secrets become. Everyone is lying, everyone is cheating, and Rome is the only man in Miami who does not give a damn about their money. Rome solves the case, finds the jewels, and returns them to the widow, only for her to reveal she was playing him the entire time. He takes his fee, walks away, and throws a one-liner over his shoulder. The payoff is pure cynical satisfaction. Unlike the other films, this one gives you closure. It is a reminder that in 1967, while everyone else was experimenting with psychedelic nonsense, Sinatra was showing us how old-school cool survives. It is a palate cleanser, proving that classic Hollywood could still deliver a punch. Directed by the madman Seijun Suzuki, this film was so bizarre that the studio fired him and destroyed his career for a decade. Shot on a shoestring budget, Suzuki used expressionist lighting, jarring jump cuts, and surrealist imagery that makes David Lynch look like a children's cartoonist. This is not a typical Yakuza film. Our protagonist, Goro Hanada, is a number 3 ranked hitman obsessed with the smell of steaming rice. His entire motivation is existential boredom. The conflict isn't just about surviving rival assassins, it's about his collapsing marriage, his fetishistic desires, and his complete apathy toward death. When a mysterious femme fatale hires him to kill a target, he accidentally assassinates his own boss. The real tension? He doesn't care. He just wants to know if he will ever feel anything real again. The finale takes place in a boxing ring during a torrential downpour. Suzuki abandons logic entirely. The hitman and his rival shoot at each other while floating in the rain, with butterflies pinned to their lapels. It is absurd, tragic, and hypnotic. Why does this work? Because Suzuki forces you to stop looking for plot and start looking for feeling. The disjointed editing mimics the fractured mind of the assassin. By the final frame, you realize this isn't a crime movie, it is a surrealistic art installation about the emptiness of violence. These 5 films from 1967 represent the entire spectrum of human creativity, from the chaotic surrealism of Japan, to the brutal poetry of Czechoslovakia, to the architectural comedy of France, the confused nihilism of America, and the sleek professionalism of classic Hollywood. They challenge us, confuse us, and ultimately, they remind us that cinema is not about answering questions, it is about asking the right ones. If you made it to the end of this cinematic odyssey, you are a true cinephile. Smash that like button to prove that arthouse cinema is still alive, comment which film broke your brain the most, and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten masterpieces.